that gets us into Willow's presentation almost. How do we establish it? We're not going to decide it here on behalf of everybody else. And so what are the next steps? You know, it's not all or nothing. This is a step-by-step construction process. And I think we're leading into Willow's presentation on transition town and transition thinking. And how, in other words, we can't leap from here to there, nor can we put it all in place in one fell swoop. So, having said that,
Okay. So Paul had
Thank
this.
you, Pebbles. Thank you.
thank you, Fred.
There's about a half a dozen. Paul had these on his table, and I thought that if I just handed them out,
Anybody need a break too?
anybody wants one, I just put them in the audience and you can have one. And we can come back to, oh, you can look at that, I want to keep that one. We can get it. So I just want to say to everybody, if you haven't put it in the neighbor jars, be sure to do so, because that's what's going to make this thing happen. And I don't know if you can see my diagram here. The transitions occur when your normal comes to an end, you go through a transition, and you get a new normal. Right? Something like that. So the transition towns model comes out of the experience that our normal is coming to an end because the subsidy of readily available, cheap, abundant, high-intensity energy oil and other fossil fuels, the ready supply of that is not already decreasing, it's about to start going down. So that's where the word transition comes from in this whole effort, and I'll talk more about it in a minute. But first of all, I'd just like to develop this notion of transition and just have us jump into an open conversation here. Just very quickly, what are some of the transitions that occur in life that just occur, that just come at you? There are transitions we design, like I'm going to get married, I'm going to change my job, and so on and so forth. But then there are transitions that we just kind of walk into the crosshairs of. So we can just characterize that, just two or three of you put, yeah.
For me, the biggest transition right now is getting older.
Getting older.
And your wife wanting to move to town.
It kind of comes out, your wife moves to town. Somebody else, just one or two more. These things just come at us.
Health transition.
Health transitions. You've been well, you get sick, you get better. Yeah. One more transition that comes at you in life.
Well, transition into the computer age.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I have thought about that. That's a good one. So, having identified what transitions are, let's talk for a second about how they feel. So, you know, you're healthy, you get sick, you have to get better. How does that leave you feeling? Or you've got a job and you go into work one morning and they hand you a pink slip and you don't have a job anymore. What's the emotional impact on us as human beings when those sorts of things happen? What does that feel like? Shock. Yeah. More. Let's get
Devastation.
into this. Devastation. Yeah. Shock. Shock, devastation.
Into the self-esteem.
Injured.
Into the self-esteem.
Into the self-esteem. Any more?
Exhilaration.
Exhilaration. I've lost that one. Okay. Shock, devastation, injured to self-esteem. Okay. Stress. Yeah. So Paul, this is for you. Is there anything about this stuff in transition that's beneficial?
That's official.
Exhilarating? Yeah, what about transitions might be beneficial?
Are there some you mean?
I'm saying, yeah, what might be? I mean, yeah, what might be beneficial about transitions?
Sometimes everything about it.
Well, because as I always say, the penalty for not changing is you stay the same, and that's not going to be possible. I mean, we're really in the state where nature bats first, so we're going to have to just hang in and start really being creative, given what we're facing, because of the natural catastrophes that are coming on.
What might be beneficial in there?
What might be beneficial in there? Cooperative living.
Cooperative living?
Yeah, the more we cooperate now, because when the survival thing is coming, or anything under stress, we don't want to start picking at each other, which of course, that's where we need a bigger room. That's where we need the bourgeois and the old settlers and so on to be more into what we're doing, you know. And I think there are movements that sort of have that connection, you know, that we could begin making it happen. And that's why I say this kind of, the way we're trying to image that our metropolitan should be really attractive. And I think that like charging admission to the town would really, we could sell that.
Yeah. So if there are some benefits to a transition. Sometimes it's the whole thing is. Sometimes it's like you get insights into how to do things. What about transitions might be destructive?
Of course.
Huh?
Of course.
No, what characterizes it? What about transitions can be destructive?
Vigilante.
Destructive, not beneficial, but destructive. What can be not helpful about it?
Because it changes everything you figured out.
Yeah.
It destroys what you're used to.
Okay.
Business as usual anyway.
Yeah, somebody else. What can be unhelpful?
Loss, in general, the transition.
Habitat loss.
Uh-huh.
Habitat
Anything else?
loss.
Huh?
Habitat loss.
Habitat loss. One more thing. What can be really unhelpful about going into a transition? Just one more person say one more thing
Well,
about it.
vigilante action.
Vigilante action. And so when you've gone through your transition, you found the benefits, you've gotten over the losses, how do you know when you're through? How do you know when you're not in this transition thing and you've got a new normal? What would you notice in your life that the new normal is established and you're no longer in that transition? Never? Okay.
No fuels coming into the area. No fuels coming into the area from outside sources. No shipments of fuels.
Oh, okay. New shipments.
Like no trucks with petroleum, or no coal trucks, or
I see.
nuclear waste going out.
Okay.
If that was all gone, you'd be more sustainable.
Okay, more sustainable will give you the new normal. Is that what you're saying? With the transition,
It would
trucks are going
mean you were more in a steady state.
Okay.
Generally speaking, when a transition is no longer occurring, you just notice that apathy overtakes the greater percentage of the population, and you have a hard time getting more than 5 or 10 people coming to a meeting. That's been our situation.
Yeah, okay.
Isn't the transition just, life is an ongoing change, it's a
Life is
continual
ongoing.
transition.
So
There
the
may be
transition,
stages or shifts.
well, there are individual transitions and then there's just the transition of life. And then there's this major
Yeah, and I'm just thinking,
Okay.
changing our highways, the way we handle our highways. To me, that's becoming more and more of a challenge, where the highways are made for an dictatorial culture of fast-moving cars. So we need to take out one of those lanes and say, no, we're taking this one for people. We put walk, and then they push things, and they don't have any motors. And so you can begin to really move against the culture by culturally changing the way we move. And I think that's a transition, because it moves us away from, we're not going to have it anyhow. The car is going, it's over, hopefully.
We could put in a monorail system and then switch to a train system and just go
And
and
there's all kinds of public transportation,
fly
yeah.
right over top of it, take a whole lot of traffic off the road.
So the transition towns model derived from one small group of people's work in a small town in England in the county of Devon. I mean, it was literally 3 or 4 people started this thing. And they go, well, we're it. Why don't we do it? And I want to pick up on some of Petal's comments, where the force of coalition building can make things happen. And then your words, the grassroots vibration. The transition towns model began definitely with a very, very strong grassroots vibration in this town of Totnes in Devon. The vibration was such that it very quickly was heard about all over England. And this started 4 years ago, and it's global. It went viral really fast. And what was one of the triggers for that was, what happened in 2008, where oil hit whatever it was per barrel. But just the general dawning of, okay, the age of oil particularly, we're it, it's gone. We really do need to change. And so oil has completely infused and saturated our lives. I mean, you can't look anywhere, or not very many places, where the oil isn't absolutely present. And our assumptions of how to live a life are based on the presence of ever-flowing, cheap, abundant oil. So when a society hits a transition that is all-encompassing, it's across the board, it's not just one little aspect of life, but the whole of life is hit with a transition. In a whole society, what kind of things can you expect? What's to be expected when that happens?
Paradigm shift.
Paradigm shift, okay.
Boom.
And what happens when paradigms shift in a person in a society? What would you see? What would you experience?
Dislocation.
Dislocation.
Lack
Yeah.
of water.
Lack of water. Okay. Anybody else?
Unemployment.
Increase in anger.
Unemployment.
Unemployment. So what happens when that shift happens on a global scale? When it's the entire global society that's going through the paradigm shift, going through the dislocation? What kind of things can be expected then?
That's what you see in the news.
The news?
We've been
war?
seeing it for decades.
Yeah, okay.
No,
What
paradigm
else?
shift isn't necessarily bad. In fact,
No.
paradigm shift may get us out of where we're at. I mean, we have to move out of the, where we're in, to something else. You know?
So,
Way of seeing things.
it's a new way of seeing. So if you realize, oh, I'm dependent on something that's actually, that's shoring up my life and allowing me to live the life I'm living, and that is going to be slowly but surely removed, what kind of changes must I make within myself to weather that? What do I have to do? You know, if you've gotten used to walking with a crutch because you hurt your ankle and someone says, you know, you really need to put the crutch away, what's the first thing you have to do in order to be able to finally be independent of that crutch? What has to happen?
You have to walk.
You have to, but what has to happen? You have to have a certain process has to happen first, or you
Healing?
will not be able to.
Healing?
Some kind of healing. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to get at what I'm really trying to say,
Flexibility.
which is before externalized changes can happen, something has to have happened internally. If you're going to get rid of that crutch, you have to have made a decision.
Probably you need to run out of money. That's usually.
Run out of money?
You'll notice that's really what, I'm not joking, that's really the key. When people feel an economic pinch in this community, people are going to be listening to you.
So if on an individual level there are changes that you have to make in order to heal and move forward, what kind of things must a society do in order to weather a transition and keep moving forward? Or, not?
Stay cool and not panic.
Stay cool, not panic, adapt. What else did I hear?
Form a support system.
Form a support system. Yeah, the grassroots
Mutual
vibration.
interdependence.
Yeah, yeah. And in the Transition Towns model, that preparation, that recognition that the transition is real and it has a massive impact on us as human beings, and that we're in a position to be preparing for that. You can still get gasoline on demand. In 5 years, we might not be able to. So we have a small window where we can prepare. And in the Transition Towns model of that preparation, how to move forward, the key word is resilience. How do we plan to be resilient in the face of the changes that are coming, where our general, what we've experienced as life support systems are shifting, and shifting rather dramatically. So the whole concept of Emerald City, and it was Dan Laser's idea to have me come and talk about transition towns because he understands enough of the model to see that building resilience into Emerald City planning puts that whole thing on a surer footing that if the planning goes ahead with the assumptions that the old normal is going to continue, right? No, we need to be planning now to bring the new normal forward, and the Transition Towns model is just that, it's a model. And there are more than 100 towns in this country that are using it, more than 100 in England, I don't know how many in Europe. There are several countries that are transition countries, Ireland, I should know all 5, but I don't. So this thing is happening. People are getting a grip because obviously the politicos aren't going to. So it's us. We're it. And we're it for each other. This is not an individual change the light bulb, put solar panels on the roof thing. Because, on the one hand, that's not enough. But we could do individual stuff, but it wouldn't be enough and it wouldn't be in time. If we wait for the governments to work, it's not going to be enough and it won't be on time. But if we work together, it might be enough and it might be in time. It's the best, probably the only horse in the race that's worth backing is us working together. And all of the communities that are using the model are doing their version. It isn't like central planning in Totnes, Devon is sending out how to do this thing and everybody lines up and slopes and says, yes, we'll do it that way. This is a highly innovative, viral, open source, radically democratic movement where whatever people want to do in their locale, you innovate on the model and make it work, and then you put what works back into the discussion, into the conversation, so that everybody in the movement then has the benefit of everybody else's learning curve. You know, there's in Paul's thing here. There was something. Oh yeah, there was something I wanted to highlight on Paul's handout here. Paragraph 4, the entire paragraph, it's all in italics. I don't know if those were your italics or not, but it's probably the most important paragraph on the thing. To hope to carry out such a widespread project, we will need an unprecedented coming together of the broad diversity of society. Anybody with any skills in anything, like George Williamson was saying earlier for Emerald City, there's something for everybody to do. This is not a new arena of activism. This is a new paradigm for living, and there's a role for everybody who wants to play it. So that's one point. Oh yeah, paragraph 6, tried and failed. Our motto should be, try again and fail better. Building such resilience will give us the capacity to deal successfully with the shocks we see and don't see, coming across a wide range of areas. So working together, working together, working together. It's the only way we're going to get through this thing. And then finally, next to last paragraph. Situating ourselves in a transition town makes sense. The solution should be the same size as the problem. We look at the whole system and not just one issue, because we're facing a systems failure, not a single problem failure. So the motto is, try again to fail better. until we're on the other side of this transition time, which is roughly penciled in as 2030, you know, when by that time coal will be obviously peaking, Saudi Arabian oil will massively have peaked years before. So my email is resilient 2030, meaning by then we're going to be we've taken a resilient approach to our planning and decision making. We choose resilience over expediency. We choose resilience over everything. It's not always going to be the most efficient way of doing things. Resilience is what keeps ecosystems going. And they are a little bit efficient and a whole lot resilient. And our economy, our capitalistic culture, is a whole lot efficient and a little bit resilient. And you see that in Japan with Fukushima. You know, you have, maybe that's an unfair example, but a huge wave comes in and the economy teeters on the brink. That is not a resilient economy. We get a mudslide on 101, closed down for 3 or 4 days. Was that thing shut? And everybody's hair is standing on it. People can't get to work. So resilience is a very deep understanding of local self-reliance, of personal interdependence, which I love this poster, interdependence, and a sense of, anybody here do Qigong or yoga? You know, horse stance. In Qigong, the beginning stance is, well, stay like that all day, right? That builds all of your systems. But, you know, if you take this stance and you become familiar with it, you're extremely resilient. You know, this building could begin to shake and I would roll with it. So, breathing, spiritual practices like yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, whatever. Spiritual practices are the absolute core of resilience. This is not an economic problem. It's not a political problem. Ultimately, it's a spiritual solution that is seeking a way to happen. Yeah?
How does can you please speak to the relationship, whatever there is, between resilience and sustainability? Because
Okay,
if
one
you
reference
can,
for
if you
that.
can connect those two, then
I'll give a
like,
reference for that and remind me to come back to the rest of my references, of which I just have a few. But a reference for that question would be Rob Hopkins, just like it sounds, Rob Hopkins, on the Global TED Conference in 2009. Everybody familiar with TED, TED, Technology Education? Yes.
St. Moritz.
Yeah, well, no, it was in England. And he gave a really good presentation on transition and answers that very question. His example was, you can have a sustainably grown lettuce that travels 1,500 miles to the store where it's sold. And that is not resilient, it is sustainable. In the context of, available oil. So resilience is an aspect of sustainability. They're definitely a dance, and I don't have a really tight answer to what you just asked. It's a really good question. But I guess when you're looking at sustainability, you have a seventh set of questions to ask, which is, if all of this is sustainable, does it make you resilient? When you look at the nature of the shocks that are coming toward us economically and politically. So sustainability it's very slippery, I think. And resilience is the word that the Totnes people have, well, it's out of ecology, right? Isn't that resilience right out of ecology? So, yeah, any other questions? I'll give you the references. Here they are.
So does resilient Ganges sound, Humboldt resilience, does that
Resilient
have
Humboldt.
any appeal, any marketing appeal?
Resilient
Humboldt
could be the
as
name of the
a
transition.
metaphor for farm grown?
Yeah, resilient Humboldt. So that's a whole set of values to bring to bear on how you might design your marijuana economy. What is resilient? What does that look like?
See, that's where the word sustainability comes more to mind before resilience.
Right. Yeah, well, there's a difference, and
Not exactly.
it's a really good question. There's not a simple answer, but the two are different. So let me just give you some. Paul gave you transitiontowns.org, and I've never been to that site. Transitionus.org is the home site for the movement here in the U.S., and it coordinates fundraising, it coordinates information dissemination, it coordinates speakers, that kind of thing. Transitionus.org. And then transitionculture.org is the mothership website for the entire transition town thingamajig all over the world. And locally, nearest to us, there's Transition Ashland, Transition Sebastopol, Sonoma. There's Bay Area. I'm pretty certain there's a transition town in Oakland and Berkeley and probably in San Francisco. I haven't looked recently. Cotati, Richmond, and the Ukiah has a strong group of people that are looking to form an official group, and there's an unofficial group from Fort Bragg down to Gualala. They've taken that whole stretch as being the Mexican post-transition. So, and there's nothing happening here in Humboldt.
I got one. I was in Healdsburg, and I go to this fair trade place, and she said they're getting a petition up to create Healdsburg as a fair trade city, something like that. So
Cool.
There's another one happening.
Cool. Yes. So fair trade transitions. Any other questions on transition of the model or anything?
What has, in your readings, what has struck you of what has worked amongst the various countries and communities? Is there anything in particular that strikes you as just being
Well,
genius?
the first thing that comes to mind on that is still in the same riff of working together, and that's using the model for meetings called open space. Have you ever run across that? Open space or open space technology. That's the meeting format of choice of this entire approach. Community currencies are definitely at the very core of this model. Am I answering your question? Mm-hmm. Spiritual gatherings. The working model calls the model calls for working groups, one education, one on waste management, and veneration, and there's one heart and soul, and that is at the center front and center of every town that's doing the transition model is taking care of the heart and soul, which was why I started talking about transitions and what does that feel like and when did you get through it, because until you get that transition is going to, it hurts. But it's also full of benefits. It's sort of like this really human condition. Then we're in a good place to plan for it. Does that answer your question? Let me guess Esteban first, then I continue.
Credit where credit is due. Schumacher.
Oh, yes. Well,
My wife is reading it right now, so that's why I remember.
Rob Hopkins went back to England from Ireland to do his PhD in sustainable living stuff. He just left Ireland, a town called Kinsale, which is another reference if you want. Kinsale Energy Descent Action Plan was the product of a 2-year permaculture sustainable living program that Rob Hopkins was teaching in a community college like CR in Kinsale. Left there to go do his PhD at the E.F. Schumacher College, which happens to be in Totnes. So he went to Totnes, which is 7,000 people, rather like Arcata, and he goes, meets other people and get what he's been talking about, and they go, yeah, it's us, we got to do it. So they did. That was it. Sort of. Here.
And I've gone to some sites and seen the English list, lots of English villages, amazing amounts of people in as transition towns. But the thing I saw that always impressed me was control of the car, making sure it didn't flow through everywhere and began to be stopped in different places and set aside and making other ways of going through the area. So that was attractive, and I think, that certainly fits for us. You want to stand on the porch of the bookstore there and watch the traffic go by for any hour period. You'd be amazed at the amount of traffic. You could walk on the tops of it all.
Yeah. Well, by using the open space technology method, and if anybody's interested, I can talk further about that. I'll stay over. People are identifying their dreams, articulating their visions, working together to make them happen. That's it. That's all there is. That's all she wrote, which is about what we're doing here, talking about our dreams, making a vision, and then working together to make it happen. And in the face of a diminishing supply of abundant, cheap, high-quality oil. So what a teacher, oil, what a mentor, wow. Kicking the butt, goes that way. And the climate change, also, great teacher, great mentor, to become engaged with earth-scale, earth-quality living. Wow.
What you just said in the specific context of Emerald City is truly a double-edged sword, because it goes as follows. In the idealized Emerald City, you want to go to Caltrans and say, never open that road again, you motherfucker, okay? And because you're now the city at the end of the road or something like that. And that's what we all want to do in our harbor, I think many of us here anyway. For us, it was a blessing. Those 2 days that the road was closed, we showed them that we are resilient. Thank you very much. Our life does not depend on 2-inch widening, no. Cut the whole motherfucking road and we're loving it. We were at the end of the road. We were almost like a destination, if you can imagine that, as opposed to a bump in the road, which is what we are, except if we get a city, we get 6 miles. Anyway, so you want to take that position on behalf of Emerald City. But Emerald City is hard enough to win adherence and so forth, and you engender another controversy. So at what point do you have to lose your out to Babylon to fit a fractal into a matrix?
That, to my mind, is where the group process comes in, where the open space meeting method steps in. Because that gives everybody who has a care to room to express not just their opinions, but the deeper felt sense of where we need to be going. And it's a method of engendering dialogue that happens not only within the walls of the meeting, it takes that dialogue out and it continues forever beyond there. And you can have endless open spaces. You can have serial open spaces on one theme. Whatever, it's an extremely flexible, dynamic meeting method. And when I first heard about the Transition Towns model, which was in the spring of '08, I went and got myself trained in how to facilitate open space. It was like it was a no-brainer for me as a facilitator of group process that I have that method in my repertoire. So I know how to do that along with a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So, and I've also done 2 training for transition trainings that are, you know, the official trainings on how to do this model and get going. So, you know, if you got my email, get in touch with me, let me know your level of interest, what your questions are. Yeah.
But like, let's say, be specific about today. So George Williamson just, you know, he made this presentation. Now we're sitting around and, you know, he probably expects a call in a week or 2 or 3. But if we start making a transition plan about next steps and where to go from here, poor guy's gonna be 90 years old before any consensus emerges even to consider going in,
You don't know what will happen out of the
No,
open
of course I
space.
don't know.
You don't know what comes out of the open space before you go into it because miracles happen.
Saying where, at what point, is it, okay.
That would be for every individual group of people to decide among themselves. And consensus has a bad reputation for taking a long time. It depends on what method you use. So, you know, there are lots of ways to approach it.
The non-coercive one.
What?
I would take the non-coercive way.
Oh, yeah,
Coercive,
that's another whole conversation. So anyway, yes,
My take is that at the present time, fear is galloping very quickly into the hearts of everyone in Southern Humboldt.
yes.
And economic, on the economic level.
Uh-huh.
And they have, most people have, not most, but certainly a large percentage of people have savings, undeclared savings, and there's a period of time it doesn't work. Yeah, everybody knows this.
Yeah.
There's still money out there, but suddenly people realize that they can have to make some hard decisions very quickly.
Right,
Their sons may have to go to work, for instance,
right.
and there's no work. They're going to have to invent their own work within a resilient economy. We may have to use local money. So I think we do have to think about doing something in the next 6 months. I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I don't think this opportunity is going to just stick around. I think within 3 or 4 years, we won't have them,
Right.
quite frankly.
And one more connection on the community currency, complementary currency piece, again at TED.com, TED, all caps. Bernard Leterre, Leitaer, Bernard. He's a Belgian, that's why his name is like that. But he's a globally recognized and acknowledged resource on explaining what a complementary currency is, how it works, and how it can be applied. And the benefit of it is the money all stays local, it multiplies endlessly, and it revivifies the economy. Everybody begins to thrive again, which then has implications for public income and jobs and that kind of thing. So anyway, yeah.
Are you familiar with any local economies near here that are doing that? Because
Yes,
I'm
Sonoma.
from New York and
Sonoma Go Local, G-O, capital L, Sonoma Go Local.
Al-Qaeda, I mean, they have what's the name of the group? The community currency thing comes out every two months.
Yeah.
Well, that's the guy
Democracy
that's earlier
Unlimited,
by the name of Young.
Democracy
Kenya.
Unlimited.
No, they're periodical.
That's beautiful point.
He has a
You
silver
don't see it down
currency.
here hardly at all.
And then there's the one that Democracy Unlimited manages.
That's what I'm talking about.
And a name to look up, I haven't read the book, it's called The End of Money by Thomas Greco. And I'm sure Leterre has written books as well. But Greco, I heard him talk on New Dimensions, and he said the absolute key to the success of a community currency is that the people who you want to take it and manage it, you know, merchants you want to spend the money with, they be the issuer. But you have local banks, like credit unions, not Bank of America. The local banks and local people doing business are the issuers. So you could go to Pearson's, which is a locally owned business, and you take part in the local currency by engaging in whatever the system is to get you into it. And Pearson's is one of the places you can go to get engaged. You might get paper money, you might get a credit card, which is what you get in Sonoma. With Go Local, it's all digital. And there's a million ways of doing complementary currencies and they're making a difference all over the world. And I've heard the number that in the Depression, there were more than 4,000 complementary currencies running in this country. So when the currency of reserve does its thing, there's something there that's resilient, that is actually a coinage, a currency that people understand and trust, that's based on us.
Well,
So
one of the inspirations, I think, of Emerald City, aside from the other obvious elements, Emerald Region and so on, was the fact of the ounce being made out of some kind of compounded bud.
Beautiful transition, thank you.
oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and I'll be here for a little, I'm here crossing, I'll be sticking around for 10 minutes.